Queer people are often told that we're different. Most of the time it's something to be celebrated. That's why we have Pride Month and Trans Day of Visibility and International Non-Binary People's Day. But sometimes when we're told we're different, the implication is that we don't deserve what normal people have. And maybe that's because we live in a society where a lot of people don't actually see us as equal to everyone else. Or maybe it's because of lack of representation. The fact that most media we see still does not include any queer characters, and when they are included, it's often in a tokenized way. And so we feel this narrative that we're different, that a lot of people do say that we deserve happiness, even if not everyone agrees, but not in the same way everyone else does. I already had a family when I came out as queer, and before coming out, my biggest fear was losing them. I was so worried that this piece of myself that I only discovered after I was already married would lead to a rift in our relationship. And so that journey of finding myself in the context of my family taught me so much about love, self-acceptance, and what family really means. So what I found since I started dating my wife and since we got married a few years ago is that superficial is often where a relationship starts when two people meet, but real connection comes from friendship and respect. Do you enjoy each other's company? Does coming home to that person truly feel like coming home? Do you want to just tell each other everything and do everything together? Do you enjoy those mundane little moments just spending time by their side? Once it became about that kind of love, that constant companionship, that just need to be together and build a life together, the superficial labels no longer mattered. And yes, the attraction is still important, but you don't need the labels to try to figure each other out. My wife and I were completely different people when we first met. I was 18, a freshman in college. She was 21 and a senior. We both considered ourselves to be cis, straight people. There was a formal at a college club that we were both part of, and I thought she was the most beautiful person in the club. So I asked her to go with me, and she said yes. And for the first 5 or so years of our relationship, I didn't really have big questions about myself. I was in college, I was pursuing a business degree. I knew that I was going for a career in marketing, so that's what I was working toward. And that journey was always marked by some self-doubts or self-esteem issues, but I didn't really know where they came from, and I didn't give them a whole lot of attention. And looking back, of course, I should have. It's not really normal to just feel unexplained, low self-esteem late at night or when I'm feeling particularly emotionally vulnerable on a FaceTime and not know where those feelings are coming from. But instead, I was interested in fashion, so I just tried to continue to dress up, continued to build up my own confidence as much as I could, and I thought I was doing the right things. Something was wrong, and it would nag at me here and there, but I never really gave it enough attention to figure out what it was telling me. So we got married. I got my first job in business, we were living together, we adopted our first dog the year we got married, and then our second a year later, and things were pretty great. Except when they weren't. Most of the time I just worked, and we spent our free time going out to coffee shops and on vacation when we could, going to the dog park, doing all of those young adult couple things together, and I really enjoyed all of them. But I also worked the night shift, and sometimes late at night I would have questions about myself, questions that were perpetuated by things that I started to see on social media. I had never really had any representation of genderqueer people in my life up until that point, but I started to come across people who were trans, people who were gender nonconforming, who were breaking stereotypes, and it really intrigued me. So I started experimenting with my appearance, painting my nails, growing my hair out, realizing that I liked a more feminine presentation in small ways. And of course, I talked to my wife about all of these things, but as I continued this journey, the question started to grow in my mind. Does this mean I'm not a man? And it wasn't because of the superficial things, the nails, the hair. Those were all just signs of something that I felt inside. But as that nagging question started to grow, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I started to realize why I might be having these feelings of low self-esteem about myself. Eventually, that led to me realizing that I wasn't a man and that I was non-binary. And so I told my wife. And it was one of those really scary moments where it could change nothing or it could change everything. She told me afterward that it didn't change anything about how she felt about me or our relationship. And that was what I hoped to hear more than anything else. I share my story to tell you that love is weird and it's messy. It's commitment to a person, not to a label or a gender or a specific identity. Yes, me figuring out who I was in the context of a relationship was messier than if I had just figured it out on my own before I started a relationship. But that's not always possible. I had a normal life, a normal marriage, with this underlying feeling that something was not quite right. It took me years to realize why I was feeling that way and to figure that out in the context of a relationship. But because my wife and I love each other for the people we are, not for the specific labels that we put on our relationship or on each other, we're still happy together. Now I'm in a very different journey of figuring out what my gender identity means and how I think about gender in a very different, normal part of life, having kids. Since having kids, my life looks way different than it used to. So much of my time is spent on diaper changes and feeding one kid a bottle and the other solid food, making sure these kids are happy, healthy, and invested in playing with them and genuinely enjoying spending time with them. And of course, all of those things are a big departure from what my life looked like before. But then when you start to throw gender into the mix, it raises a lot of questions. At the end of the day, gender is a social construct. Like everything that we conceive about gender is designed to help us easier understand and in some cases control people as a society. All of those stereotypical views of men and women, of women being caretakers and men being masculine, the way we dress, the way we present ourselves, the way we act, all of those are rooted in social norms of gender. When your kid is born, the hospital is going to assign them a sex at birth. It will go on their birth certificate, and that is how we will think of that child until they get old enough to potentially tell us otherwise. So society automatically puts your kid into a box, but then it's up to you how you raise them from there. And it's something that my wife and I have given a lot of thought to, because with both of our kids, we did not find out their sex until they were born. So when we had baby showers, when friends wanted to buy us gifts, we always asked for gender neutral clothes. But at the same time, we do buy into a lot of those stereotypes. Like we buy pink clothes and dresses for our daughter. We buy blue clothes and collared shirts for our son. And so if you look at our daughter, you assume she's a girl, and you look at our son, you assume he's a boy, even though they don't have all of those other characteristics that make it obvious how they were assigned at birth. And the realization I've come to is that the odds are it's most likely they will not be gender nonconforming, transgender, any sort of gender other than the one that aligns with their sex at birth. We can show them ideas of gender nonconforming people. They're going to have a parent who's gender nonconforming. That's me. So inherently, they will grow up challenging ideas of gender. But I also don't want to force it the other direction, where eventually they feel uncomfortable with the things that are stereotypically associated with their gender. So in other words, for now, we'll treat our daughter like a girl in the way society would expect, and our son like a boy, while making sure to keep an open mind and showing them the options that are out there. But it's not just about the kids, because then there are the questions that reflect back on us as parents. Questions like, do we celebrate Father's Day or some other day? What do nieces and nephews call you? What do your kids call you when you get older? And I know as kids, we feel like our parents have it all together, but I absolutely do not. And my answer to most of those questions is, I don't know yet. There are the assumptions that other people make about my wife and I when we're out, and the questions of how I respond to those. One time I was walking my kids around the neighborhood, and a neighbor came up to me and introduced herself and then said that she thought it was really cool that the husband, that the man was the one staying at home with the kids and subverting gender roles. And while she was right about the subversion piece, I didn't tell her that it was in a different way than what she was communicating. It's just another one of those incongruencies between the filters that society has created around parenting and family units and the way that we as queer people will exist within them. The most challenging part of this gendered world of parenting is not knowing there are others out there who don't fit the mold. I have never seen another non-binary parent in any of the media I've watched. Now, granted, it's mostly rewatching Supernatural or Star Wars movies, so there's not a ton of opportunity for that. But my social media feeds also tend to show me young queer people, non-binary people who are figuring themselves out from a young age. And while that's great and warms my heart to see, that's also not my reality. In fact, the only time I've ever directly spoken to another non-binary parent was when I posted a video about how I have no idea what my kids will call me, and a bunch of non-binary parents responded. The queer spaces I inhabit, like going to local punk shows or engaging in queer communities online, tend to be younger, or it just tends to be very rare for any people to have children. And so even though I'm someone who shares about my journey on the internet, until I posted that video, I had never felt that sense of realization that there's so many other parents out there who had a similar experience, didn't fit the gender norms of parenting, and who could stand in solidarity to change them. There are always going to be these incongruencies. Society presents us with a binary gender system. We live inside of it. And big events like weddings and having a baby will make some of those gender distinctions even more visible. But like queer people have always done, we can subvert it. We can change the way that other people think about parenting, about being part of a family, just by living our authentic lives around our families and the people we meet. The point is, if you listen to society, you'll hear that you don't deserve the things that normal people have. That yes, you might be queer, yes, you might be celebrated during the month of June, but you're not normal. If you want to become a parent, you can do it. There will be these weird moments where people don't know how to label you, how to place you in a box, where you fit into parenting, and that's okay. Kids are much more understanding and flexible than adults are. So even if no one else in the world understands your identity or gets you or understands why you want to be referred to and seen the way that you are, kids will understand and they'll see you for who you are. And that's another beautiful moment on the journey of self-acceptance. So if you're queer, if you want a family but you feel like you've been told you can't have one, I'm here to tell you, you absolutely can.